Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for another founder-led sales stories where founders who have successfully navigated their founder-led selling journey share with those who are still in the middle of it. I'm Pete Kazanji, author of Founding Sales, the Startup Sales Handbook, and your host. Today we have Sai Guduguntla and Atul Raghunathan, co-founders of Hyperbound, makers of AI role-play software for go-to-market teams. These two former AI engineers with zero sales experience managed to build a product that went viral on LinkedIn, closed 40 enterprise customers, and reached $1 million in ARR in just 11 months, all before hiring their first salesperson. My biggest takeaways from this conversation were how they accidentally created the perfect product by solving their own problem first, their brilliant strategy of using custom-built simulation bots to drive virality inside target organizations, and their systematic approach to evolving from SMB to enterprise sales despite having no traditional background in sales. I'm especially excited about their insights on identifying compelling events like SKOs and acquisitions and how they turn social media engagement into a powerful lead generation engine without relying on traditional cold outreach to start. So with that, here's Sai and Atul. Thanks for joining us for another founder-led sales stories where founders who have successfully navigated their founder-led selling journey share with those who are still in the middle of it. We're here with Sai Guduguntla and Atul Raghunathan, founders of Hyperbound, makers of awesome AI role-play software for go-to-market teams. This is the first GTM tech folks we've had on the show, and selling into sales can be both rewarding and then also a little tricky. You typically have a very strong, hey man, we make you money pitch, but it can also be complicated with lots of cooks in the kitchen, crowded vendor space, and more. So I'm really excited for these guys to share their story. So Sai, Atul, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, Pete.
Thank you for
All
having us,
right,
Pete. We're excited.
get pumped. I'm sorry that we couldn't be here together, even though you guys are in San Francisco. I don't have my my in-person studio set up, but maybe next time. So, first things first, maybe you guys can share a little bit about the problem that Hyperbound solves, who the organization type is that buys it, at least right now, because I think we'll talk about like the kind of journey of how that changed over time. Who are the specific people in the organization who care about Hyperbound? And then maybe like, average deal size and kind of what your current sales org looks like. We can start there.
Awesome. Yeah, well, happy to answer that, man. I mean, we originally started Hyperbound out with selling to SMBs, but very quickly on, we learned that this was a product that was definitely meant for larger orgs. And by large, we're talking about typically the types of companies we sell to, more than 500 employees is a sweet spot. So these companies typically have at least 50 sellers. They tend to have very little enablement. Maybe they have like two people in the enablement team trying to enable hundreds of reps potentially, and so it becomes really hard to give every rep one-on-one coaching time. And so part of our mission at Hyperbound is to be able to give every rep that one-on-one coaching time, so that during onboarding, but also beyond onboarding, they get the support that they need to constantly improve and become the best version of themselves.
Got it. And so who are the people that like specifically care about this? I imagine that this is probably like enablement and sales leadership.
Absolutely, yeah. Typically, it would be the enablement team. RevOps is also included, usually, and the CRO is the final decision maker, typically.
Got it. And then when you think about like those folks, I imagine that like RevOps probably isn't leading the charge, so to speak. It's probably more they're responsible for like integration, whatever. Where do you typically start? Do you start like with sales leadership? They have a problem and they then delegate you to enablement, or do you guys start with enablement typically?
Yeah, we've seen a little bit of both.
Okay,
It depends
bit
on the
either.
sales org, and it depends on the industry as well, right? Especially in traditional industries, we often see sales leaders coming to us first.
Mm.
Um, it's hard to explain why, but that's just a pattern that we've seen over and over again.
Kind of like
But
like older school organizations.
exactly, more older school, like think insurance companies, manufacturing companies, right? Healthcare. We tend to see sales leadership come to us directly. Most likely because a lot of those companies don't even have an enablement function, right?
Totally.
Their managers, their sales leaders are the enablers. So we've seen that. But in the world of B2B SaaS, more often than not, it is the enablement team that comes to us. Especially recently, it's all been enablement.
Makes sense. Cool. And then, so Before you guys started Hyperbound, what was you guys' background?
Yeah, no, happy to shed some light on this. Sai and I have actually known each other for, what is it, 13, 14 years at this point?
Oh my God.
Crazy.
You
We
guys
Crazy.
met
met
in kindergarten?
no, oh man, no, we're not that young, Pete, but we met in choir in high school, if you can believe it,
Amazing.
right? And it's been it's been a quite the journey since then. Even back then, we were always builders. We always knew that we were the overachievers, right? The ones who would stop at nothing to get it done. So when it came to the time to pick someone to start the company with, we were both quite natural fits for one another. Uh, what we ended up doing career-wise, though, before Hyperbound, I got my master's in machine learning. Sai was at Salesforce Einstein, and then he was at another startup for a bit. I was on the Meta Ads Core ML team for my master's, defining ICP with 11,000 axes. Right, the ultimate extreme of data-driven go-to-market. So, given that we were both touching AI and go-to-market in a bit, it was a pretty natural landing point for us to start with when we ended up in Y Combinator in the summer of 2023.
I love it. So the rest of this conversation is only going to be an acapella. Is that okay?
I think
Let's do it.
I'm down for it. Let's do
You're
it.
down. I don't think I could hang with you guys. Okay. Well, maybe you can share a little bit about your initial problem hypothesis and then maybe how you guys went about validating it. Obviously it's not like you guys were leading a sales team and you were frustrated by the fact that like you couldn't, you know what I mean? A very common design pattern is like, hey, I had this issue at my last company. I'm going and we built some internal tooling. So what kind of inspired the issue, and then how did you validate the hypothesis?
Yeah, this is one of our favorite questions because it took a while for us to land on Hyperbound. Believe it or not, Pete, when we first got into Y Combinator, this was summer of 2023. So this was, I believe, May. May was when we first decided we wanted to go do our own startup.
Just right
And
past ChatGPT, because ChatGPT was October 2022, right?
exactly, just,
Yep.
it
Okay.
was still very new. Most people didn't even know what it was. It was still the early days.
I think only 3.5 was
Um,
out, maybe.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, 4 was
3.5
out.
3.5.
Turbo had just come out.
Yeah.
This was those days.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, it was May 2023 and Atul and I, we knew we wanted to start a startup, but we had no idea what we wanted to work on. And the first thing we did is we went to a coffee shop in Cupertino because that's what people in Cupertino do.
We went to a
And
boba shop, more accurately, because that's what
boba
people in
shop.
Cupertino.
I did not want to embarrass ourselves by saying that, but
Wait a minute. Okay. Whoa. Okay, Sai, what's your go-to for what's your favorite boba flavor? Michael, my son's is he's a big mango guy, and he's actually less on the boba and more on the lychee jelly. So
oh yeah,
what's you
the
guys
lychee
is
jelly is good. I'm a
what's
brown
your
sugar
go?
boba guy. Brown
Okay, and
sugar.
then Atul, what's yours?
Oh, I do caramel. I do mango green tea sometimes. But yeah, one of the two.
Wow. Okay. Cool. So we're at the boba shop, which is
Yep, we're
obviously
at
where
the boba
startups
shop
start
in
in Cupertino
Cupertino
at least.
specifically.
In Cupertino at
Specifically
least.
Cupertino.
Okay.
Exactly. So,
So we're at the
we're at this, yeah, we were at this boba shop, we're sitting across each other and we're just like, man, we both know we want to start a startup. And we came up with nearly 17 ideas in one day. Just sat down, like threw
oh
out all
boba.
these ideas, a lot of boba. Took us a couple hours to do that. And at the end of the day, we decided, hey, you know what? Let's just go apply to Y Combinator. So we chose one of those ideas that we felt more confident about, applied with that to Y Combinator. And for those of you that don't know, there's a question in the YC app that specifically asks, do you have any other ideas? And in there, we decided, well, why not? We have 17
16.
ideas. Yeah, we have 16 other ideas. Why not just throw all of those into this box?
Why not?
So that one answer was probably longer than all the other answers on our YC app.
This is like completely not surprising given what I know about you guys.
So that's what we did. And, we obviously, we didn't expect to get in. And we came up with this idea a week ago. We had just started doing some customer interviews. Like, no way YC's going to choose us. And lo and behold, we got our first interview. And,
And
we
was the
somehow
initial
got past
idea
the
that you proposed was the email personalization one, or was it a different one?
No, not even. It was actually a customer support related idea.
Oh,
If you
okay.
want us to go into it, I'm sure Atul would enjoy that. But
Well, I guess
No,
we
but
could
like,
skip it because Hyperbound current is like 3 pivots from that, right?
oh, it's
absolutely,
not
that
three, it's like 15. Like email personalization wasn't even on the list of 17 ideas,
Oh,
nor was
wow.
what we're working on today. So yeah,
It was the
we're
18th, and then
was the
Hyperbound
18th, and then
Hyperbound is
Hyperbound's
the
the
19th.
19th.
This is amazing.
Absolutely,
Just goes to show you.
absolutely. No, so it's interesting. We came with these 17 ideas, and we're like, okay, once we got into Y Combinator, and somehow I don't know how we got in, but we did. I think the first thing that we had to figure out was zeroing in on one of these, and we have 3 months to do that. And so what we did is we decided to go reach out to 25,000 people on LinkedIn, completely cold.
25,000?
Thousand, yes,
25,000.
completely cold LinkedIn messages. We didn't even know what Apollo was back then. We didn't know what Outreach was, so we had
Oh
no idea
my
how to
God.
sequence emails. We were just handwriting them inside of Gmail. And next thing you know, so 25,000 LinkedIn, 10,000 cold emails. And we got a decent response rate, interestingly enough, thanks to Y Combinator. And we were able to land 2,000 user interviews. So over the course of a couple months, we talked to over 2,000 people and crossed out each idea. And at the end of the day, we're like, man, sending these emails was so annoying that we decided to, Atul
Let's
actually
sequence
decided to
that.
go build. Exactly. So he's like, let me just go build a script to make this easier for us. Right. So that's what he does. And next thing you know, everyone in our batch was like, oh, can I get that script? Can I get that script? Like, we're sending emails too. And we're like, why don't we just sell this? This sounds interesting. And we started selling it to founders in our batch. And one of the founders was like, like, have you guys considered selling this to SDRs? And I'm like, what's an SDR? Right. And he had to explain to me what an SDR was. And quickly we kind of, dived into that space and we realized how big of a problem emails were in the world of B2B SaaS, especially, right? These large B2B SaaS companies, like Vanta was an early customer at the time. They didn't even trust their own SDR team to write emails. And so
And
that
this
was the
was not about it
problem.
was just not about the sendingness. This was about the
The
authoringness,
the
essentially
copy.
the configuration, right? And so you guys were using 3.5
Absolutely.
Turbo to make it, to make so essentially this was like a baby proto like AI SDR, but like only for the configuration of the content. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah, so
cool.
that's exactly what it was. And even at the time, we didn't call it an AI SDR, but that's essentially what we were building. And, in a matter of a couple months, we actually managed to go from 0 to 250K in ARR by the end of the YC batch for that product. Right. And along the way, we had very few at bats, Pete. We wanted to make sure we're the best versions of ourselves on every sales call that we had. So we were practicing on this AI that we built on the side. It was like a very bare bones version of the AI role play we have today. But it was just to get the marbles out of our mouth, practice some objections. And I remember November 2023. This is a couple months after the batch. We were selling this product, and we were at a conference in New York. And we were at a round table with a bunch of CROs. Somehow we were the only founders here, so we got a bit lucky. And I remember, I think, Pete, we met you during this trip in New York as well when you did that Atrium event. It was during the same week. And, one of the CROs turned to Otto and he was like, so let me get this straight. You guys are engineers. You spent the last 3 months building this product. You have 10 customers. You're at 250K in ARR. How the hell did you guys learn to sell so quickly? He's like, it takes my reps 3 months to make their first sale. You already have 10 customers, right? And I think that was such an eye-opening moment. We're like, no, 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 it's not that big of a deal. We practice on this thing, we practice our objections, but it's not a big deal. And they're like, no, that is a big deal. Like, what is that? Can I see it? So we booked a couple of coffee chats with these CROs throughout the week, showed them the product that we had been practicing on, and they were mind blown. Every CRO we met was like, why aren't you selling that? Like this AI SDR stuff, they're like, I've seen this AI SDR stuff. It's okay, it's cool, but I don't know about it. But this, I would buy this in a heartbeat.
I love it.
And that's how we started our journey on Hyperbound.
What a fantastic story. Thank you, Sai. That was really cool. I think what's kind of neat about each of those you have iterated scratch your own itch kind of situation, which is something that YC talks about quite a bit, about at least knowing that this is a non-zero problem because I have it, right? Now, of course, the next thing becomes, okay, well, do other people have it? And I think what you observe there is that, very much the case. And I think that you know, having market contact to make sure that other folks have it quickly is important. And in you guys' case, that ended up being the case. It's not like you guys were in a cave for a long time with a toolbot,
Absolutely.
baby a toolbot,
I mean,
coaching you
I'm
up.
not gonna lie, Pete. I mean, at the time, I don't know if you remember Lavender, right? The
Yeah,
email coach. Yeah. So,
remember. Yeah, Will.
yeah, while we were building this AI SDR type of product, Will's product was taking off, like it was everywhere, and we were like, damn, people are paying a lot of money for a coach that teaches them how to write emails. I'm like, what happens when these reps jump on actual calls? What happens then?
Yeah.
And that was a big inspiration for us making the final pivot and being like, maybe there is something here. We're just not realizing it.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So who was so you got these CROs around you. You're like, you should sell that. And was the response to that like, no problem. There's going to be a $50,000 DocuSign in your inbox as soon as I get onto my laptop. Or who was your first? So it's all well and good for someone to be like, you should sell that. It's another thing for someone to actually buy. Who was your first customer? Maybe you can kind of take us through that story.
Well, one piece of advice for folks who get the "you should sell that" advice,
Yeah, totally.
is a lot of people will say that and they don't mean it, right? They don't put their money where their mouth is. They want to make you feel good for the sake of that conversation, right?
Totally.
And salespeople will do this especially hard, but it's true across other industries as well. And one thing that we learned quite early on as a part of doing those 2,000 user interviews is if you get happy ears every time someone says, I want that, you need to properly validate what they'll actually put budget behind. And there's one particular resource that helped us out tremendously with making that distinction. It's called the MOM test. I'm sure you've heard of it, Pete.
It's a great
Yes.
book.
Big advocate of folks reading that. And with that, we did all these coffee chats. We got all this interest, and we decided that, hey, at the very least, this product is worth launching. This product is worth launching because we can build an MVP of this that is going to have the basic role play functionality, the basic scoring functionality. And if it goes viral on the internet, if there's a fair bit of interest behind this, it's worth taking the full pivot away from what we're currently doing with the email personalization and going full beans on this product.
Right.
So that's exactly what we did.
You guys knew that you had, like, at least the product worked and it moved the metric for you guys because you guys were selling and these CROs were like, you guys are so suave. What's the deal here? You're like, I know. You should have seen me 6 months ago. I was a disaster. But then I used the toolbot. So you knew that it actually moved the metric in question, like it worked, right? And then the question is, okay, can we get, product story market fit where people are like other people recognize that. And in your case, I think the cool thing about Hyperbound, which sometimes applies to other organizations or other products as well, is it manufactures content, right? It naturally creates content. And in you guys' case, it like creates like provocative content that works really well on LinkedIn or Twitter or what have you, especially at LinkedIn, where people are like, use it as like work Instagram, where they're trying to, like, oh no, I'm working right now when I watch this guy getting, crapped on by this cold call bot or what have you. So I think you had a hypothesis that you could launch this and it creates content. And so you might as well take that shot. And I think there's another lesson here for folks, which is if it turns out that your product can potentially manufacture content as part of what it does, then maybe lean into that, or like maybe lean into it from a productization standpoint, or certainly lean into that from a from a content marketing or like a micro chunked content marketing. Okay, so what happens? You just record a bunch of calls of like the robot being mean to you, and then put it on LinkedIn. No, what did you guys do?
Not at all. So we actually we put it out there. We we remember we talked to like 2,000 people. So we asked a couple of those folks as well to record some videos of them trying our AI and posting that. So yeah, it was about like 10 quick videos from folks. But what really went crazy after we put this out there, folks started recording, like random folks, people we had no connection to, started recording videos of themselves getting hung up on by our AI, getting shut down by our AI, booking a meeting with our AI, and posted that to LinkedIn, to YouTube, to TikTok, to Instagram. And we went viral everywhere, right? Sai and I actually, this is a fun fact. We used to have a Slack message that got sent to us every time anyone did a call to any of our bots. And there was one night when our phones just wouldn't stop ringing, right? It
They
was
would
like buzz
eventually
after
just
buzz after buzz.
you like just burn down your Slack instance.
No, basically, like it literally, like we were on the free instance at the time, and we were maxed out on messages.
No, and when you think when there's two people in the Slack, like you don't need to turn on Do Not Disturb. But then that was like the first time I turned on Do Not Disturb on my Slack.
That's amazing. And so I drove. So a bunch of people are goofing around in the product, which is cool. But the important thing is, and this is something that sometimes folks get twisted about with respect to PLG. Just because the users, the ICs, are using it doesn't mean that the budget holder is aware of it or cares about it or has visibility into it. Especially when you have situations where the user might want to like not let the boss know that they're using it. That's like not really the case with Hyperbound, because I would imagine it's more like brownie points, like, hey, check me out, I'm doing extra credit, aren't I awesome? As compared to sometimes this shows up in like open source software or infrastructure where it's like, hey, I decided to use this other data store that isn't blessed, please don't kill me, right? That can actually be like a little bit of a sometimes people are like, I want to do PLG, because it's like actually sometimes PLG is your enemy, because literally the CIO will get mad at people for adopting your stuff in a guerrilla case. So so it goes viral, but probably with the ICs, right? The SDRs, the AEs, et cetera. But I imagine it probably got on the radar of some of these leaders who did you get a bunch of demo requests? Somebody just
Yeah,
like,
so
wire you 50 grand? How did that work?
yeah, the wire did happen soon. But before that, there was one more step, right? So we knew that having a bot out there where people can just try it for free, it's great. But you're absolutely right that we had to find a way to get it to the leadership. And so what we started doing was we started, messaging some of these reps that were especially excited about the Hyperbound bot. And we're like, hey, I know you just tried this one bot, but what if I told you, you sit with me for just 10 minutes, jump on a Zoom call or even just a phone call with me. I will build you a custom bot for your company, right? It will take you 10 minutes, that's all. And I'll send you a link, and all you got to do is just share the hell out of that link on your Slack, right? Put in your like EMEA Slack for all like 2,000 EMEA reps, right? And just challenge everyone, right? And you'd be surprised, man. Like we did get pushback from a couple people that are like, no, I'm not going to put myself on the spot and share this thing. But there were quite a few reps that were so excited about it that they posted it in these channels, and it would just grow like wildfire within the company until their leadership started reaching out to us. Right? We started getting emails and being like, hey, like, one of my reps tried this thing. They emailed me about it. It looks really interesting. Could I book a demo with y'all? Or so that's
Right.
how that started.
So essentially you had
Yeah.
a lead gen that was IC facing. You were able to then use that information to qualify, be like, oh, that's some IC at like, waste management or whatever. Okay, no. Oh, that's some AE at Samsara. Oh, okay. Wow. That's like a
That's
1,000-person
exactly what
sales.
we did with
Yeah.
Samsara, in fact.
Got a good sales organization. The
Yeah.
Samsara's and Verkada sales organization are children of Meraki sales organization, same founders.
Ooh.
And Meraki sales organization was always nails. And so essentially you have like the kind of cascade from that. So anyway, oh, here's Samsara. Hey, and so worth engaging. Hey, buddy, how's it going? Can I do something even cooler for you? And then you could imagine, like, are there any specific initiatives that are going on right now? Do you guys have any specific training that's like, oh, da, da, da. All right, here. And then I think the important thing though is that the reason why this works for you guys is because the individual is engaging in something that will get them brownie points throughout the rest of the
Exactly.
organization. That isn't always the case, right?
Mhm.
Like, and so I think that founders that are listening to this need to make sure that if they're hearing these strategies, they don't just like blindly apply them, and always think about the personal motivations of those like those ICs or the managers or the CIO. I mean, this is sales in general, and in like, in a nutshell, is like thinking about personal motivations and thinking about what your counterparty is thinking. Um,
Yeah.
Wonderful. And so
I will say, Pete, there is, I think, one more learning moment there too that was very crucial. It's that, you know, most people, what they do is, as once they start getting these calls, right, what they'll do is they'll just immediately set up automations that go send like, generic cold email copy
right,
to all these people. That's not the first thing that we did. And I think that's part of the reason is because we're not salespeople. That wasn't like the immediate inclination. It was like, let me just go message these people with highly personalized message. Like I would sit there all day, watch that Slack channel. I'm like, oh, look, it's someone from Plaid. Let's go message this enterprise rep. I would go message him on LinkedIn instantly, right? I just put in like a super personalized message so that he can't avoid it. And that's how we kind of got in the door. So we did a lot of things that just don't scale. And the automation came much later, like months later. We did that for a long time. I think that's what allowed us to get so many people to actually respond, like those highly personalized messages that we wrote.
yeah. I mean, I think that is a founder-led superpower, is the fact that, like, people connect to someone who's putting their heart and soul into something, and if you represent that, like, oh, this is literally the founder who did this thing that I have interest in. Obviously, if they don't have any interest in it, they don't care. But like, oh, this is the person that made this thing that I obviously have some amount of interest in. I will take a second look at this. I love it. And so that, like, that viral explosion to lead gen to custom Hyperbound bot kind of creation. That's eventually what led to your first customer.
Yeah. So that spawned essentially our first paying contract. We got this within 2 weeks of launching. It was very, very quick. And, the money was wired over. This is our first 20K contract. And, I still remember Sai and I celebrating that. The previous product we were selling, by the way, Pete, email personalization, we were like shoving down people's throats, right? Put it
Like,
from zero to,
they weren't pulling it. You were like
there's no
shoving
pull.
it.
We were like trying our hardest as founders to make sure that folks adopted it, make sure that people wanted it. But this, our calendars were booked out. People were our demo calendars were completely booked solid, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day of the week, including weekends, Saturdays. We had Sundays off, but for 3
Slacker.
weeks in a row post the launch, and yeah, like we were seeing folks happily willing to sign a 20K annual deal versus with everything we had built before. Everyone was like, I need a 1 month back out. I need a 2 month back out. Can I do a 2K pilot? Can I get a free pilot? Right. This, it was just like, no, like I'll take it. Give it to me now. So from that perspective, we knew that we had built something that at the very least generated excitement. And when you're in a position of something, when you have something that generates excitement, there's plenty of ways that you can take it. But it made our go-to-market motion, I would say, much simpler than sales that don't necessarily have that wow factor, that viral moment.
Yeah, for sure. Well said. Yeah, it's like, if you can get attention and excitement, ideally, you can't always necessarily do something with it. And or at least, like, the thing that got people excited may be difficult to specifically monetize, but at least getting them excited um will, like, opens the door to lots of conversations, and, like, potentially then you can pivot or what have you. In you guys' case, like, literally the thing that gets them excited is the thing that then they end up buying.
I mean, the
That's
launch timing was also perfect, Pete, because this was SKO time for salespeople,
oh
right? So because we launched this January 22nd, 2024.
wow,
Everyone's, yeah, like it was on everyone's mind, like training, coaching. They're
great
like, oh man,
observation.
like we're gonna have like 1,500 reps in house like next week. Like, what the hell are we gonna do, right? And they see this thing pop up on their feed, and they're like, wait, this would be cool.
I love how this is just such a phenomenal example of like how founder-led sales is supposed to work because you have two really bright guys who are doing things, right? And doing things accidentally sometimes, which is okay, right? Like just do it like it's almost like brownie in motion, right? Like doing things. And then you see something like, oh, let's record some of our own things. Let's have these other guys record it. Oh, okay, actually that's working now. Or like ours didn't work. No one cared about us. Oh, there's work. That's cool. Um, oh, they're coming inbound. What should we do about this? Well, I guess maybe we should make a custom bot, right? So like if you hadn't seen all this inbound, then you wouldn't have like activated your brain to be like, what should we do next with this? And then you just happen to be so like that was probably the beginning, the adolescent form of your sales motion where you like grab an inbound lead, the offer is a customized hyperbound bot, right? Um, the the motion is essentially distributed within the organization initially through Slack, maybe, but then maybe later on through something else. But like these are kind of like the not scaled version of this. And then you also identified like the compelling event. Like it was accidental that you guys were launching during SCO season, but then subsequent to that, you're probably like, what's going on right now? And like three people say like, well, I've got sales kickoff in like 2 weeks, and we're trying to figure out. And you're like, what is this thing? What's an SKO? What is it? Is
That was
SCO?
literally us.
Yeah, what's this thing? Oh, it's where we get everyone together and we need to train them once during the year. Oh, that sounds like a really painful problem and also a highly like time-bound, compelling event. Interesting, right? Anyway, the point is that this like you earn these secrets by doing things, right? And then and many of the things that you do will be wrong and you just discard them, but you would never have discovered that without launching, etc. I love this. So I would imagine that you guys probably got over your fear of sales pretty quickly by building the software, a tool bot that that so so normally I ask people about that, but in you guys' case, you have a very unique answer, which is just like, oh yeah, we just built software to get that out of it. And by the way, it became our business. So that's well, aside from a toolbot, and Hyperbound 0.1, what other kind of resources helped you on your founder-led sales journey?
Well, Pete, there's a very obvious answer to this question, which we will get to in a sec. But I'd say the other one that really pushed us along in the early days was being part of that Y Combinator cohort. So there's one particular thing that we used to do as a part of that cohort that was called group office hours, where we would all sit there, like it would just be like 10 of us sitting in a room. All of us did not know how to run a go-to-market motion, but we were sitting there sharing our sales KPIs and what we were going to achieve in the next 2 weeks. And the goals were always outlandish. And you needed to not embarrass yourself in the next group office hours. And the fear of not embarrassing yourself in front of your peers, I think, is a stronger motivator than anything else. It's why sales orgs work today. So it drives that type of hunger that allowed us to really just put our face out there, like be open. And that drove a lot of the initial getting over the hurdle. When we
Like
had our first, 2,000 conversations, we became more comfortable.
yeah, like accountability loops end up being really important because the accountability loop is there. You're sitting there and you're like, man, I think I want to record some videos and put them out there. Man, am I going to look like an idiot? I don't want to do that. I don't want to look like an idiot. But then you're like, wait a minute. Group office hours is next Tuesday. If I don't do this, I'm going to really look like an idiot there. Oh man, I'm going to record these videos, right? I'm going to do all these things. Yeah, I mean, I think finding your accountability buddy. I mean, ideally it's your co-founder, but then I think also that having external accountability can be really powerful there as well. So YC helps with that. What other sort of resources? So we've got Hyperbound, right? Right. Hyperbound 0.1. We've got group office hours. What else? What else helped you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious one that Atul was mentioning earlier, obviously, if for the listeners out there, if you haven't read Pete's book, Founding Sales, that is an absolute killer resource. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on your podcast, Pete. I really do mean it. we still refer to that book every day. And I think you said it right. It's a handbook. That's what it is, right? It's not meant to be like a, at least personally, I think it's not meant to be like a sit down and like, let's story time, like let's read this. It's more of a handbook. Like, hey, okay, I'm struggling with hiring. Let me go to the hiring chapter and figure out, how do I hire a salesperson? Oh, I got to figure out comp, right? Let me go check that chapter out. Right. Oh, I got to build an outbound motion. Okay, let me just flip to that chapter on Pete's book. Check it out. So that's been super helpful. And then the other thing, Pete, too, is like you're always available on phone, man. Like we would, sometimes like there's something, there's like something missing in your book, and we're just like,
you guys are teaching me the Gen Z, micro async communication. My 7-year-old wakes me up at 5 in the morning, and like iMessage has like 10 messages from on our group chat. I
no,
love it.
I would, the number of times Otto and I called Pete over the last year, insane. Like we would just call you up at 11 p.m. at night sometimes and just ask you a quick question. You'd give us like 10 minutes, get straight to the point, get it done, and move on. And that was super helpful, man.
Yeah, I think having good advisors, someone on the show recently was talking about this, about advisors that are not like far from having been practitioners themselves. So they can, which is kind of the purpose of founder-led sales stories, is to, because, expertise has a decay function to it. And so what you want is you want folks that, have been in it. They don't have to be in it right now necessarily, but ideally they were, in the arena, so to speak, in the last 48 months or what have you. And I think actually you had some other advisors that were very
Yeah, we
helpful for
did.
you as well.
We absolutely did. Yeah. So we had an advisor who is now our head of key accounts at Hyperbound. So he joined full time after advising us for almost a year. His name is Bilal Batrawi. But he was a huge part of helping us figure out our sales motion. Like he helped us master discovery, negotiating, right? He helped us iterate on our pricing model, which I know we're probably going to cover at some point in this conversation too. That was a big doozy as well. But yeah, for those of you that are watching this, I would say get a sales advisor, right? Someone that actually understands how to build go-to-market, specifically at an early stage startup. That was Bilal's background. He was at 7 different startups in his time as an early sales hire. So
Or like
knew
like a handful of folks, right? Like
yeah.
I think you can. That's kind of what I'm trying to do with founder-led sales stories here. Was like you can imagine your helper who's great at like who has done go-to-market tech before, your helper who has, and like they're expert with respect to that segment, or your helper who's very like used to early stage, like you're talking about with Bilal or what have you, just to kind of like fill in those pieces, and just so you have them on iMessage. Let's talk about the pricing thing, because I think you guys joked earlier that you evolved it a bunch, and then Bilal helped you with it as well. Maybe you can kind of take us through how that evolved, because I mean this is talked about in founding sales, but in from a pricing standpoint, you guys are in go-to-market tech. There is one dominant vendor in go-to-market tech. It's Salesforce. I can see the giant building from right here, the cloud penis. The but if there's like a big thing that you're like, if there's a kind of like a monopole in the industry, then oftentimes you just want to align with that pricing. So like, in HR tech, usually that's just like employee counts, right? In go-to-market tech, usually that's seats, unless there's like a particularly like compelling reason to diverge from that. And I think you're seeing that in support a little bit, where you had like support, especially with AI, where you have like support, Zendesk has support seats, or Intercom has support seats, and then now with like the advent of like Fin or what have you, you have outcome-based pricing. So in you guys' case, did you start with seats? Did you start with something else? How did that kind of take us through the kind of like twists and turns there?
Oh yeah, we started with a little bit of everything, Pete.
A lot of twists and turns. Pay what you want. Pay us
honestly,
pay us in Boba. It's cool, man.
The nice part about having a not PLG motion, right? Having the ability to not disclose pricing anywhere, is you can experiment with like 7 different pricing models at once. When you're selling to different industries, when you're selling to different sizes of companies, different verticals, and no one needs to know. So that was what led
That's
to
awesome.
a insane amount of complexity in our pricing in the early days, but also I am very grateful for it, for every lesson along the way, because it really helped us evolve into what we have now.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you're able to test a bunch because you're having conversations, which I think is very much the mom test. And I think this is something that we're hearing more and more is that a lot of founders are, and this is probably the result of folks getting better at like founder selling and what have you, where they're actually asking, they're not building before selling, they're selling and then building, or selling a very minimal thing and not saying, and when people say, well, I'll try it out, I'd love to do a free trial, then our response to that is like, no. Clearly you don't care enough about this, and that's actually a signal to us that this problem is not of a sufficient magnitude in order for you to care about this. So the fact that you're able to have a bunch of those conversations allowed you to kind of ferret that out. Did you guys start with just seat-based pricing? How did that work?
Interestingly, we started with something even more complex than seat-based. We divided orgs up into groups. So we're like, okay, this is small org, medium org, large org. Each one gets a unique flat fee. So we're like, okay, if you have between 10 and
Flat
15 reps.
variable
Yep. So
platform
bucketed.
fees.
Yep. And then we're like, hey, no, this is really complicated. What happens when someone wants 72 seats, right? What happens when they want expansion based? Well, I guess we got to give them the pricing for those additional seats. So then we're like, okay, well, now we have multiple different platform fees. And then on top of those, we have different additional seat costs. So now we have platform plus per seat. And then we're like, hey, well, what if we did what if we go with the wave that everyone is talking about right now? There's a lot of interest in outcome-based pricing, or at least input-based pricing for a lot of AI-based products. So what happens if we did platform plus usage? And then at the end of the day, Pete, there's two things that you have to align to in coming up with a pricing model. The first is value. The way that your value structure should be aligned with your pricing structure, and the second is expectations. This comes in the form of the existing budgets. This comes in the form of what people are used to,
Yes.
and people in sales tech, they want seat-based pricing.
On seat
So
seat
here we
based.
are.
Yeah, we had the same challenge with Atrium, where what would happen is sometimes organizations would want to buy Atrium for a subset of their organization. Like, we're going to instrument the SMB team and the mid-market team, but not the enterprise team and not the account management team. And so what we initially were like, okay, we're going to do this based on what we called manager pricing, where like the manager was the user there. But in order to make the economics pencil, those would end up being like $499 a month for the manager, right? Well, they have like 6 reps or like 8 reps that report to them. So, on a per rep basis, it was like $79 or $69 or whatever. But then, that seat, you're in a renewal conversation, and that order form shows up to the CFO. They're like, "This is $499 a seat." It's like, no, it's the manager. It's like there's a whole thing. Just do the division there, and they're just like, "What?" Like, no, like, let's get on a call with this.
Yeah.
And then that just goes to, I think you said it really well, which is like the expectations. Okay, and so you
No, that's
guys
the
are just
same
like,
reaction we got to the Sorry, I was just going to mention that's the same reaction we got for the platform pricing as well. Because when we did the
yes,
platform plus seat, people are like, they showed to the CRO and they'd be like, wait, we're paying a per seat, and why are we paying another 50K platform again? Right? And we'd be like, well, it's access to the platform, blah blah blah. The per seat cost is actually very low, and they're like, then why don't we just do per seat only?
why doesn't
Right?
this
They
look
didn't
like
get
my
it.
Salesforce bill?
Right.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Totally. That's like the high order bid. Can you make this look like this? And that's usually what ends up happening is like people look at whatever the big, and you see this in applicant tracking system software, HRIS software, et cetera, where there's like some big thing, and then they look at your thing as either a subset of that, or if it's more powerful, maybe it's like a superset of that. But it's usually like, here's this thing, like a Salesforce seat is $150, or like retail on it, it's like $150 per rep per month for I think for just pure Sales Cloud or whatever. And then they just think about this like, oh, okay, is this half as valuable as that? Is this actually like more important than that? And then they just want to index off of that. And actually, I would imagine that probably this ended up changing as your idea, or like the pressure showed up as you guys kind of changed your ideal customer profile, or iterated that. How did the ICP change over time? Like I know when we first met, it was like SMB organizations and specifically their SDR teams, right? Because SDRs are doing the most cold calling. And the early versions of Hyperbound were attuned to that, even though in most organizations, like the predominant amount of like selling time, of course, is like meetings that are being prosecuted over Zoom or what have you. How did that kind of change? How did that ICP change over time?
Although you want to take this one, I know this is your
Oh
favorite
yeah,
one.
yeah, no, more than happy to. I love chatting about ICP, so thank you for this one, Seth. Well, the ICP changed quite a bit over the year. Right, we went from selling to orgs that had a minimum of 8 seats. That was our original grouping. To now, we don't really talk to someone unless they have 50 seats or more, and we prioritize our 250 or 500 or 20,000 seat customers on the upper end. So it's also not just ICP with regards to the size of the org. There's a couple of other attributes that we identified over the years, and there's a lot of lessons in how we got there. So I'll list out the 4, and then I'll tell you the lessons that we used to get to each one. The first was they have to be B2B,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Why B2B, right? Like, hey, B2C folks do a lot of cold calling. The ROI is much simpler for B2C because it's a 1-call close, 2-call close, transactional, really simple sales. Well, B2B sales are much, much more complex. You're typically selling a large platform product on the upper end. And this means that training is not a one and done type of activity.
Right.
Training is a continuous, weekly, monthly, daily activity. And that's when you need a scalable solution like us, as opposed to event-based, like a SCO-based type of training. That was the first one. We also think that B2C reps are going to be replaced by AI, with a whole other side story.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get the Cresta guys on here in the future. Yeah. Okay. So they got to be B2B. What was the next attribute?
B2B. Second one is that they need to have the problems of scale. They need to be a larger org. So 50 plus reps. Why did we learn this? Well, when you have 3 reps on the team, you don't have tribal knowledge. They get lunch together, these reps, and they talk. So they can hear each other call on the sales floor. But they're in a global, remote, distributed org, people selling different products in different languages to different buyers in different parts of the world. The amount of tribal knowledge just builds and builds and builds over time. And change management becomes a game of telephone across multiple layers of management. So
yeah,
another big criteria.
And you're constantly bringing in like you got everboarding situation. You're constantly bringing in new reps. The reps are attriting. You're bringing new reps in. This is always kind of a key initiative that we could tie to with Atrium was, there's a new product launch because product management and engineering have been working on whatever. It then has to deploy into the organization. Like the larger organizations buy other companies all of a sudden. Now they have a new product to sell. All that sort of like alignment and kind of distribution of knowledge becomes more and more and more complicated the larger you get. So that makes a ton of sense that you guys kind of like aligned on that.
And that touches on our third point as well, which is we sell to folks selling complex platform products because they have more change management. They simply just have more in terms of like someone is always launching a new feature. One of your competitors is always launching a new feature. One of the competitors of multiple of your platform SKUs is launching a new feature that you need to align with. The market is always changing. The buyers are always changing. So from that perspective, they need to be selling a complex multi-platform product with more than 50 reps in B2B. And the last criteria, I'd say, is the most interesting. The weirdest lesson that we learned, probably the least applicable, but one I like talking about. There should be a performance gap between the top and bottom performer.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems pretty obvious.
There's not.
Which sales org doesn't have one?
Yeah. Well, it could be more or less pronounced, right?
I mean, because the ROI that we deliver, when you think about it, when we come in to build an ROI is, hey, we take your top performers and your bottom performers and do this.
Yep.
If your bottom performers are already here, what are you going to do?
If everyone's slaying because you're selling like free money or whatever, and someone can, roll out of bed, still hungover, maybe even drunk from the night before, and close business, then Hyperbound is, a substantial nice to have there.
It's a nice to have. That's what we got from OpenAI. I mean, we tried selling to OpenAI at one point, and that's literally their director said our problem isn't training, our problem is headcount. We need more
exactly.
salespeople.
Yeah, we need more salespeople to say, how many seats, right? Got it. Makes sense. That's fabulous. And so what would be mechanisms by which to identify this? Because one, like sales headcount, easy. Just go on LinkedIn Sales Nav, check that out. B2B organization on their website, right? Complicated product or multiple products also on the website. Performance gap. That seems to be something that we'd have to maybe tease out in discovery, maybe ask in a form fill. Were there any mechanisms by which you could like identify that externally, or did that have to be in a form filler or disco?
Yeah, externally it's pretty hard to tell, but you can usually tell also just by how the company's doing, right? If the company's just growing like 40% year over year or 50% year over year, you're like, yeah, they're probably fine. Coaching, training probably is not the biggest thing they're thinking about. That happened with a prospect the other day. I mean, they told us like, hey, we have all these problems you're describing, but it doesn't really matter because we're growing 50% year over year, and I don't really like our CRO doesn't really care.
Yeah, like this is
Just
a
how
problem,
it's
but it's priority 6.
yeah,
And you're like, all right, cool.
yeah.
We will
So
talk when it's priority 2 or 1.
exactly, and that's just something you can't tease out just from data that's available publicly online.
If
But
there's
we have the
only a
usual
way to get
stuff.
better at discovery to make sure through role playing that you're doing a good job of teasing these things out and differentiating between, top priorities and otherwise. Got it. Excellent. Well, what so just identifying organizational like characteristics that are ICP is one thing, but organizations have lots of problems. So figuring out when it's likely that they're going to have the problem that you guys solve is obviously next level. Are there particular compelling events that make it such that people would be saying, "Man, I really, really wish there was an AI role play gymnasium that I could put all my reps in to learn XYZ."
Yeah,
We
thankful
talked
for
about
us,
SCO.
man. There are so many. I mean, SCO is one. Hiring, right? If you see a bunch of job boards out for salespeople, they've got to onboard and train those people. The messaging rollouts, right? There are some companies that are, completely, maybe they just started working with the force management. Like that would also be a good signal for us
Right.
too. They'll post about it. They'll be like, hey, we just implemented command of the message. And I'm like, oh, perfect. Well, let's get your reps to train on Hyperbound then, right? Acquisitions, right? For larger companies, they're constantly on acquisition mode. And so that's another like really difficult thing to do, especially like, Sales Loft. I remember we were talking to them in the early days when they first acquired Drift. That was a big initiative for them to get all
Got
the
it.
Drift reps.
So there's lots and lots and lots of signals that you guys can like key off of, and then outbound against, or what have you. What are the mechanisms by which you're able to kind of like track these sort of things? Because I feel that a lot of these things are like you can see them in retrospect, like, oh yeah, they did a product launch, but I'm curious how one could like, you know, uh, systematically track product launches or systematically track new acquisitions. I guess in the case of acquisition, you could like you use like PitchBook or CB Insights to, or to pay attention to that. What were some of the ways that you guys systematize that, or is it more just kind of organic?
I wish we had a great answer for you, Keith, that we're reading the minds of all the prospects in the space and updating them just in time. The truth
Just
is,
in
they all
time.
just come inbound to us when these critical events happen. So that's been a large part of the strategy.
One, I think that's the brand is like the content component is making sure that people are aware of the fact that that's the thing, right? By just pumping tons of content out in the market.
We're also just a
Yeah.
little too egregiously active on LinkedIn. Both of us, people post stuff there that I use as signals all the time, just scrolling through.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Got it. So it sounds like one, them being aware that you guys solved this problem because essentially they've been like mind virused so much on social that this is exactly the problem you guys solve. And then secondarily, I don't know if there's any good like LinkedIn social listening stuff. Like
Yeah. Well,
obviously
I'm talking more like
Common
manual.
room.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about like doing it manually.
oh,
Like
I get it.
just us
Yeah.
scroll. We had like a block on our calendar where it's like, hey, we're just scrolling through LinkedIn just to find signals. It's
Fair enough.
ridiculous,
Yeah.
but we did do that.
Do things that don't scale. Social listening example. Okay. So when you guys were kind of tuning your sales motion, we talked about the compelling events. What was something that worked really well to compress and reduce friction in your sales motion?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and we talked a little bit about this before, was just having the customized bot that they could just try out. And it's like value creation almost immediately, right? Like the way our demos work, Pete, is as soon as they jump on the demo, we'll build a bot for them on the spot. We build in like 3 to 5 minutes. We'll have them customize it, and then we'll have them do the role play on the call. Right. And they don't know. Most people don't even know they're about to be put on a role play. And we just do it, and they're like, oh, I'm doing it? And we're
Really?
like, yeah, yeah, you are. Right.
Watch
And
how easy it is.
yeah, and it always gets people like that feeling, like that nervous feeling. And it's great because it makes them realize, like, damn, like I want to put my reps in this situation and see how they do. You know, like I'm nervous, I'm sweating, wonder how my reps would do, you know? So that always worked really well. And we still do that to this day. We always build the bot, we share it with the org, try to create a bunch of excitement internally, get some champions, and go from there.
Nice. What was something that didn't work?
Oh, one thing that didn't work very early on was we used to do very short paid pilots. So we used to do like a 2 week type of paid pilot where 1 week we would spend, building the bots, and then the second week we would spend, rolling it out to the team. And I'd say that the main reason why these didn't work, people had incredible expectations for what you could accomplish in a week. They're like, yeah, the entire org's behavior change is going to be within a week. I'm going to see downstream, like deals are going to close, because of what we did in this 1 week. And then that's when I'm going to buy. So one of the things that we started doing as a result is we started anchoring on some of the leading indicators, some of the things that indicate that change is happening, that these folks know are correlated to outcomes. And we restructured our pilots since then. We restructured our sales process since then so that folks don't anchor on, oh, I need to see more deals closing, in my 6-month sales cycle in order to know that I should invest more time in the Hyperbound. Right? Like you need to have those compelling training reasons beforehand, and we will fix those directly, as opposed to having to see what the very, very far downstream impact should be. It's taking
So
charge of that situation.
yeah, essentially just guiding folks on what the thing, what the proof of value would be, and then for them to understand that like it is correlated to outcome value as well. Now, of course, one way you can do that is you just have once you actually have customers in place, you have like success stories, and talk to other folks, et cetera, et cetera. These are the outputs. But then when you have folks where you're either A, building that situation before you have a ton of customers, or B, when you're interfacing with customers who like, maybe are not aware of those or don't care about those or what have you, allowing them to see what those leading indicators might be, that everyone agrees are correlated to the outputs there.
It's all about expectation setting, right, Pete? Because if you don't expectation set, their expectations are wild. Like people
Yes.
dream, people are, this is going to be the best bot ever. This is going to be the best score ever. Our reps are going to close more. It's like, wait, hold your horses. It's not perfect. The stuff is bleeding edge stuff. It's very new. It's going to make mistakes. It's not going to be perfect. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they're a lot more receptive when things don't go as well. And that's like a tactic that works all the time.
Yes, my favorite version of that is using the word typically, right? Typically the way that we go about this is we're going to do this, and this. And what you'll oftentimes see is between this and this will be the outcome associated with this. Obviously, we're focused on this outcome over here, but for obvious reasons, during this 2-week process or what have you, we pay attention to these things right here. Is that fair? Oh yeah, that totally makes sense. And then there's essentially what you've just done is you've redirected their brain, right? And they understand what's happening there. Kind of related to that, because you're talking about the effective pilots and expectation settings and what have you. What about with customers and deployed customers from a customer success standpoint? Like what was particularly important with respect to customer success to get folks up and running and on their way to those outcomes that they were signed up for that you effectively framed for them in the pilot process?
I'd say that the simplest thing with customer success is you need to give the person implementing the platform confidence that what they're going to do is going to work. If you don't give them the confidence, they're going to half-ass things. They're going to do a partial implementation, be like, I'll put more effort into it when I see it working out, when I get the engagement from folks. Versus when you show up with success stories or when you show up very confident, being like, I know this will work and here's why, and you break down the logic for them, they're able to sell their efforts not only to themselves, which is very important, but also to all the other stakeholders internally. And the belief that it's going to work is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it does work. So when we tried to be very handholding, where we controlled the strategy and we would like move them along just one step at a time, without essentially getting that buy-in from them and giving them that comfort that it was all going to work, everything failed. But versus when we flipped the case, we put it back on them, we gave them more responsibility and gave them recommendations and gave them comfort, they took initiative. Right? They filled the little gaps in their sales org that we couldn't see externally. And we ended up with much, much happier customers.
Yes. So giving them confidence, also related to salespeople, right? That they're, I think that is you've hit on a very strong like human psychology truism, whether that's you're selling your salespeople on that this product is right, or alternatively selling the prospect that this thing is going to be effective, and then they've already bought it, but then selling the individual, like the customer, excuse me, the post implementation, post sale implementation contact, who may be someone different, like the CRO bot, or maybe the CRO and the VP of enablement bot, and then it gets assigned to an enablement program manager who's like, what's this thing? Right? And so reselling them on why this is going to be powerful and why it's going to get them promoted, right? And get them a better job, all those sort of things. I guess that's essentially what we're describing here is continue to sell even into the post-sale environment, but in a non-commercial way. Sai, you were saying something?
Yeah, I mean, I also think, this is going to apply to all founders who are maybe building something brand new, something greenfield, because that's what Hyperbound was, is greenfield. Nobody's ever used an AI roleplay product before. And so I think the biggest challenge for us on customer success is there were no best practices to follow, right? I didn't go, we didn't go copy like Outreach's support center. Like there's nothing that we could do. We had to come up with everything from scratch. And customers also felt that, because when they do a Google search, how do I set up an AI roleplay bot? There's nothing. There's no blogs, there's no articles. We are the source of truth. And it's not just about giving them this documentation, but also presenting it confidently, being like, no, hey, we've done this with other customers. We're experts in our own right. We're the first case study for our own product. It works. Here's what you got to do, right? And they feel so much more comfortable and cared for when you deliver it that way too.
Got it. What did your early sales stack look like aside from Hyperbound all the time?
Yeah. Yeah, we had Hyperbound from day one, of course. But yeah, we use HubSpot for our CRM. I think it was just, initially we were using Salesforce, and I'm a UI UX guy, and I absolutely hated Salesforce, so we switched to HubSpot. Warmly, Vector, our B2B, we use a bunch of website visitor signal tools to de-identify people who visit our website.
That would be important if you have a highly viral product that pushes out a ton of content, right?
Absolutely.
On a social. Gotta see who's showing up on the website and differentiate. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the VP of enablement from Samsara landed on the website, even though he was looking at this during a meeting, so obviously couldn't try out the bot right then and there. But that's okay. Now we're gonna get so the de-anonymization of things like vector and what have you. What else?
That's super helpful. And then we actually have a flow that we built early on where we basically de-identify these visitors using warm lay vector RBDB. We'd send them to Clay. We'd enrich their data inside of Clay, and then we'd actually kick off a lemless sequence from there. So Clay, it would not only enrich, but it would also figure out, are they ICP? Because we don't want to message people that are not ICP. So it will do that ICP check, and it will automatically send it to the lem list, where it will kick off a LinkedIn automation as well as an email automation as well. So it will connect to that person on LinkedIn, both from Atul and my account, and then send an email as well. And it will kick off a sequence that goes on for like a week and a half or 2 weeks or so. Yeah, so that's our main flow. So Clay, lemless. We're thinking about switching off from lemless right now to ample market, but that's still a conversation.
Those are sales engagement tools. They'll do LinkedIn automation as well. Do you just because I don't know if LinkedIn allows you to do like I don't think the APIs support the like messaging and what have you. Does it just
They do
grab
now.
the
well,
oh it does? Do you just
well,
grab
they
the
don't.
auth
They don't
token or do you
actually.
just like log in as them?
If
Yeah, they don't
LinkedIn's
actually
listening,
use
we
it.
don't do any automation whatsoever,
I mean everybody does, but whatever.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
so
use lemless for that.
So
Yeah, they
Lemlist does
do.
both of those things. It does
Yeah.
email and then it also does LinkedIn automation. Yeah. When I had the Warp guys on, they were talking about a bunch of automation around Twitter as well. That's not your
Ooh.
audience because your audience is CROs and like VPs of sales enablement and what have you, and so they're spending their time on like work Instagram, which is LinkedIn, whereas like spend a lot of their time kind of like being spazzes on Twitter and what have you. So it's interesting to see that like how a lot of the sales automation stuff doesn't support Twitter. It does do a better job of supporting LinkedIn there. Well, so how many customers did you guys close before you end up hiring your first sellers?
Yeah, I mean, don't quote me on this, but probably around 40 customers or so. So
Okay.
we didn't hire our first salesperson until we hit 1 million in ARR. And that was just fully founder-led sales, just me and Atul selling. So that took around 11 months or so before we made our first hire.
Yeah, that's a good amount, uh, especially for ASP of your size. If your average selling price was like 5K or 10K and it was like a 2-week close or like a 1-week close or a 2-week close or whatever, you can imagine that being a lot higher. But I think that like that's a good amount for a 40K ASP, right? Or like a 25K ASP where you're kind of like hitting the top of the S curve there. Okay. So I would imagine that in addition to having both Hyperbound, which you could drop somebody in and then they'd be trained up very quickly. The good news is that you had a pretty well documented, even if it was like tribal knowledge, like recorded in Gong or Fathom or what have you, sales motion because you guys had done a lot of repetition. So what was the profile of your first sales hire and then what did you do well for hiring and onboarding them and getting them successful?
Yeah. Our situation was a little bit unique, Pete, in the sense of, there's most startups these days, they always start out with, the SMB accounts and it's a little bit different. Like we got to enterprise very quickly. Like we were closing like, massive 6-figure deals by the end of that 1 year
It's where the
mark.
need was, as we discussed, right? Like,
Exactly.
you guys followed the pull.
Exactly. And one of the challenges we had when we were on a search for an AE was there were very few people that, had that enterprise experience, especially at an early stage startup. Right. And so we were really hunting for that. And lo and behold, one of our advisors who had been advising us, like I mentioned, Bilal, that's exactly what his profile was. He was an enterprise seller that had worked at multiple startups in the past, and he offered to join the team. He actually asked us if he could join the team and be a full-time rep, and we're like, oh, this is perfect.
Good signal.
Exactly.
Right?
So
it's always a good sign when your customers want to invest and when your customers want to come work for you. This is something that we saw quite a bit at Atrium, was we have RevOps people who would say, "Hey, like I could come be a great seller at Atrium, or we'd have sales leaders who are like, hey, if you guys are hiring sales leaders, like I'd love to come work. It's usually like a really good sign of like folks who want to invest, somebody folks who want to join the organization. Another kind of like good example of like of pull. Um, Nice. And so what did you do to onboard to make the onboarding as effective as possible?
Yeah, I mean, again, because this person was an advisor and our sales coach for over a year, the onboarding was actually fairly smooth for this
That's
person. But
cheating.
that is cheating.
There
It
was
is
no
cheating.
ramp period actually.
He closed the
We
deal
definitely,
before he joined.
I mean, he did. He did help us with one of our biggest deals before that. But yeah, I mean, I can tell you what the experience was like for our second seller though, because we did hire another mid-market AE. I think yeah, it's been about 5 months now. But yeah, he was a top performer. Both roles before this, he used to be up front, and then at Zip later, he was a mid-market AE. And yeah, so he came to Hyperbound because he wanted to be an enterprise seller. And but we knew he wasn't quite there yet, but he saw Hyperbound as a stepping stone to get there, which was perfect for us as well. And yeah, his onboarding, honestly, it was all about making sure he spent as much time as possible with Atul and I. That's what it came down to. We said, hey, it has to be in person, 5 days a week in the office. You're gonna shadow us on every call, right? And sometimes we just throw him into the fire. Week 2, he was running discovery, and doing role plays on Hyperbound in the process as well, in between and on the weekends and stuff like that. And yeah, when the rep is motivated and they're in person spending a ton of time with the founders, you'd be surprised by how much they absorb in such a short period of time. This guy, like, he came in, he was a sponge, learned a ton in a very short period of time.
Yeah, and I think yes, and I think hiring for someone who is smarter than the average bear and eager to do those things early on, like usually one of the descriptions that folks will use for this is like a pioneer salesperson. In you guys' case, you had done a bunch of selling, which is great, but there's going to be things that are missing. You need folks to figure stuff out on their own. Obviously, having 5 years ago having a bunch of call recordings that was extraordinarily valuable as compared to 10 years ago. Now having a bunch of call recordings and a bot that literally can be all the different personas and can kind of train you up is all powerful. But you still need high quality human capital in order for that to stick in their in their noggin, right? When you get further along, um, I think you can be a little bit less strenuous, kind of like less stringent there. But especially for those first hires, you definitely want someone who can like jump up the learning curve very quickly, especially depending on the complexity of your product. And I think that the thing that you described right there is like front is like kinda sales tech, not really, but it's in the same kind of realm. And then of course Zip, which is like procurement automation software, multi-stakeholder, complicated, not exactly a new category, but kind of like a new thing for the segment that they sell to, right? Kind of like bringing that down. That those are like all really good characteristics for someone coming into an
Well, the other
organization
thing
like
is
yours.
you're selling software to procurement leaders who are also a pain in the ass to work with in general.
Yeah, totally.
Negotiating with procurement sucks, and so I think, yeah, we got lucky with that too. He had a lot of experience with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation there as well, which is one of the things that Jason Lemkin likes to note is you want to look for a seller who had a harder sales motion. So someone
Yeah.
who's going from an easier sales motion to a harder sales motion, it's very difficult, right? So to use as an example, let's say, you have sellers from Ramp or Brex or Navan who early on, 3 or 4 years ago, it was free, right? Like it was free software because then they would make money on the transaction interchange. And literally, you're just convincing people to give up their Silicon Valley Bank credit cards or their Amex credit cards or what have you, move on to Brex, and then the company actually got paid by the banks through interchange. Well, that's a very that's a pretty compelling sales motion, and it's not as difficult. And this is actually something that a lot of those guys had to change after interest rates went up so substantially, where they still make money on the interchange, but all of a sudden their debt facilities cost a lot more than they did previously, and so now all of a sudden they have to charge $19 a month or whatever it is to card folks. So essentially, it made the sales motion harder. But some of those early folks, if you were to then go and bring them into sell like something to finance people who where they actually have to write a check for 50 grand or 100 grand, it's very different than saying like, yeah, just try it out. Let's just like issue some credit cards. It'll be fine. So I think that, looking for folks that have had a harder sales motion when hiring can be super critical. What mistakes did you make when kind of hiring and onboarding?
Yeah. No, it's a
You didn't
lot.
have them use
We made a lot.
Hyperbound enough.
I think it was less on this. Yeah, it was definitely, a lot of, I would say, rookie mistakes on our end. Stuff that you told us to do even back then, and probably just went through one ear, went out the other until we experienced it ourselves. Something as simple as just documenting things, right? Because you don't realize, like, over the course of a year, Atul and I had gathered so much information. Like, we
Yeah,
knew every competitor, right? We knew every
in
value
your
prop.
brain.
We knew every buyer. We knew the brand. We knew the story, right? And now we expect these people to come in and inherit all of that and be able to talk about it just as enthusiastically as we did all this time. And so just being able to document that, putting it in a place where they can absorb that in their own time, that's something that, I personally didn't do a good job of in the early days. Still not perfect, but, I'm working on that. I would say the other piece is just, you have to realize like everyone has their own way of selling, right? Not everyone's gonna sell the exact same way as you. And so I think in the early days, we did a little bit too much of like pigeonholing. We're like, oh, hey, this is what worked for us. So this is exactly how you're going to do it. And the problem is that creates pushback that, early sellers, especially who are very motivated, who are experienced, they want some liberty to be able to, work within a framework and figure it out and sell in their own way. And so I think, yeah, we started creating more space for our sellers to kind of experiment and do things like that rather than trying to pigeonhole them into this specific way.
And I think that maybe works early on, but when you get to hiring, 5 reps or 10 reps or whatever, you certainly don't want to have, 5 line chefs that are making the souffle 5 different ways or what
Absolutely.
have you, right? Like you want to, this is literally why we have Hyperbound, right? So it's
Mhm.
essentially like, hey, do discovery this way like this, because then the AI is going to grade how well you align to. Did you do variations within a theme? Great, but did you hit all of the discovery questions, or did you leave out 2 critical questions because you were so busy with, your jazz hands over here? That's less. You can't have that happen. You can do variations within a theme, but you need to hit the most important kind of critical parts here, right? Again, very helpful to have something that is both generating a role play for you to then do that behavior in, and then grading you after the fact and giving you feedback immediately, versus a manager a week later pretending to watch a call and then actually not giving you the feedback. I love it. Well, kind of in closing here, guys, what if you were to kind of synthesize like one thing that you would provide as a recommendation to folks who are, 24 months behind you, what would be kind of a takeaway for them as relates to your founder-led sales motion?
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing is, and people still get this wrong, and I'm going to say this here, and still so many people going to do the classic go into one ear, go out the other ear, but I think it's worth mentioning. I think that people, especially if you're selling software and you're a technical founder, stop building and start selling. That's what I'll
Start
say.
talking to people.
Yeah, start talking to people, learn how to sell what you're building first before you build it. Uh, too many people get into this like rabbit hole of let me just build this whole thing and then show it to them once it's perfect. And then next thing you know, you just spent like 6 months building this thing no one wants. So yeah, Atul and I have always been very big on, let's just go out, build like the minimum possible product we can, and just go try to sell this thing. And if we don't get get the bite, then let's not spend more time on this. So
Atul, what would your takeaway be?
Well, I would say my core takeaway, and this isn't just for sales, this is for every part of the startup journey, is write stuff down so you can be intentional about iterating on it. There are so many things that you're going to have to make decisions about, especially when it comes to something as complex as a sales motion that you've never done as a technical founder, perhaps. Write down the decisions that you're making so that you can go back, you can reflect on them, you can do your retros, and you can come up with a better strategy for next time. There are so many areas that you might be letting just chug along because you're not actively looking at them. And when you write these things down, you do tend to. So biggest takeaway.
Got it. Wonderful. Well, gentlemen, thank you for taking the time to share your story with the folks who are kind of 24 months behind you in their founder-led sales journey. Appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day. Okay.
You too,
Thanks so
Pete.
much, Pete.
Thank you for having us.